Cody Alexander match quarters. Today, we're going to be looking at Darious Williams, who will be joining the Rams after a stint with the Jaguars. He's one of the best zone corners in the NFL. And one of the things that I like about him is that he can move around with the number one receiver from left and right. A lot of times we get corners that only want to play on the right or only want to play on the left. When you play in a zone scheme like Williams and you then are going to follow the number one receiver, the opposing team, you're going to have to move around. He's kind of more of a matchup guy because he's 5'9". So this is not a 6-foot corner. This is not one of these 6'1", 6'2" kind of lockdown types. This is a guy who can really play in a diversity of schemes. And this is why I wanted to go over this, because it really highlights the Havoc rating that I've used to kind of illustrate why teams are selecting certain players. Yes, there's a familiarity with Williams with the Rams. He did play with them for a while, but the fact that he is a very zone-centric corner and that he is good in multiple different zones really lends to the fact of why they brought him back in free agency. The Rams are not trying to play cover one at volume. So this is somewhere where, like, if Darious Williams were to go to the Cleveland Browns, you might want to scratch your head and be like, why are they taking a zone corner and putting him in a man-centric scheme? So let's break down Darious Williams' player profile, and then let's take a couple of looks at different clips of films illustrating his technique. Williams is on the smaller side of corners, but it really allows him, the way that he plays, to move around and be able to play from the right and left. Now, he is not a slot corner, even though he is smaller in stature. This is somebody that plays primarily outside. If you look at his Havoc ratings, he's in the top 50 in every single category. Jaguars just didn't play enough cover zero for him to even get in that rating. But he's a top 50 corner in cover one. He's top 10 in cover two. He's 14th in cover three, and he's 32nd in quarters. That overall creates a 7th ranking in corners in terms of Havoc rating, just in coverage. When you look at his run rating and you look at some other things like a pass rush, he doesn't really have a pass rush at all. This is a pure cover corner. He ends up being 10th in composite. The reason why I chose him to go over is because it really illustrates, again, when you have a diversity and you excel in the top third in all of those, that really demonstrates the fact that you are one of the top corners in the NFL. You're not a one-trick pony. You're not just a man guy. Now, man is always going to have a premium in the NFL. You have to be able to lock down, and you have to be able to play a boundary corner. Most of our number one corners, the guys that we're really going to look at, we want them to be the boundary guy. We want them to be the X. We want them to be able to, lock down that big receiver. This is not one of those corners. This is a guy that can play in a lot of different schemes. He's an off-ball corner. In fact, if you look at his press rating, he has a press rating of 155th in the NFL last year. His tandem corner that he played with last year for the Jaguars had almost a 40% press rating. So this is not somebody who's going to match up tight in coverage. He's an off-ball zone corner, and he's one of the better ones in the NFL. When we look at Darious Williams' heat map, you can see that he does not give up a lot over 20 yards. That's exactly what you want, especially from kind of a cap corner that we're getting in this zone scheme. He does primarily play on the left-hand side, but you can see that the Jaguars really used him to travel around. Most of his passes are going to come low in the zone, either in the intermediate or in the short, and that's by design. Playing a lot of zone, he's a zone guy. He's 45th in man coverage. He's 14th in zone, which gives him an overall coverage score of 7th in the NFL. Now, the thing that you want here is you want to have a first down to touchdown ratio lower than 30. He's a little bit higher. His coverage per yardage is right around the league average, and his quarterback rating is going to be a little bit higher just because we are seeing, this is not QBR. This isn't anything like that. This is really just pure rating. And a lot of times in zone, you're going to be giving up catches. But what he does is he really contests the ball on the outside. You can see that he does that really well. So let's break down his technique, because again, we've seen some man corners. Now let's see some zone corners. Darious Williams is a zone corner. He's going to fit really well into what the Rams are trying to do under Sean McVay, playing a lot of diverse zone coverage, which is kind of where we are with this, Fangio adjacent scheme that we have in LA. In our first clip, we're going to be watching Williams on the top. So he's going to be right here against Pittsburgh's Johnson. We're going to get a sail route here on first down, but this really illustrates why he's one of the better zone corners. And two, being 5'9" really allows him to have quick feet, and he can keep kind of those feet underneath of him. You can see that we're going to get a walkout here on this vertical stem. So anytime you get a kind of a slight stem here by the receiver, he's trying to stem you outside, trying to get you vertically into fight to kind of really compress. Williams does a nice job understanding that he's capped out right here. Capped out just means, look, I'm vertical. He can't beat me vertically at all. And you can see the departure speed here of Johnson, even if I'm just kind of using it in a little bit of a, using the clicker here. You can see that he's not burning hot. Right. You can see that he relaxes once he passes the sticks, knowing that we're probably either going to get some sort of a comeback or we're going to get a sail route. Williams does a really nice job of kind of just walking back. And then once he breaks that sticks, you can see that he's going to bring his feet together. And when we get this kind of big hurdle step plant by Johnson, this is when he's going to keep his feet together. He's going to kind of hop back, and then he's going to drive down and on top of the receivers. So really good example of kind of where he is and understanding of what he's going to get. So you can see that he's going to, once we get this across the sticks, you can see that he's going to sit back in his tuck. Probably don't want to have him as tall as he is, but again, he's 5'9". Him being able to drop down, we're talking about centimeters, not necessarily inches. So he's going to be able to then hop down, plant and drive, and then get to the top of this receiver to end this route. Williams does not always press, but he's functional when he does it. This is a really good example of a tuck position. Our feet are going to be narrow. Our hands are going to be right on our knees, and our eyes are going to be looking down. This is a prime example of what your tuck should look like in a press. We're only going to be about yard to a yard and a half off. And what we're going to get from Thomas here is we're just going to get a slight kind of a jab and then an outside release. So all he's doing, this is what you would call a soft press. So he's actually just going to peer step outside. And then once he sees that Thomas is just going to head right now to the sideline, he's going to kick step and he's going to try and get into phase. So once he sees that Thomas brings that arm down, because Thomas is expecting him to jam right here. Williams doesn't actually jam. He lays jam. So once you know you've got an outside outside release, you don't necessarily have to throw the offhand jam to bring your hips forward. His hips are already open. He stays in front. He's going to jam that pec, which is really nice. And again, Thomas is going to swipe down. So now Thomas has already swiped. He whiffed the first time. Now he's swiping the second time. Williams is going to sink right into this hip pocket. And then he's going to see right here that Thomas is looking back. So once he's in phase, he's going to get in this hip pocket. What you want to do in this situation is you actually want to force the ball over the top. So what Williams has done is he's settled in the low hip. And then once he gets in control, then he's going to look back for the ball. Thomas is already looking back for the ball as well. So normally what you're going to get if you run it back to the very beginning is that this is a short yardage situation. So he's wanting to sell the fade, but then throw a comeback or throw kind of that low shoulder fade, back shoulder fade. So Williams kind of understands this. He sinks right into the low hip, and then he's just going to play the ball in the air. So this is a really nice job of kind of keeping Thomas occupied with this inside hand. Once the ball comes, he's going to take that inside hand. He's going to punch the ball up and out. And it's a really good example of kind of a soft press versus a bigger receiver. Remember, Williams is only 5'9", so peer step outside, swipe the hand down, punch the pec, get in phase, arm on arm right here, and then punch the ball as high as you can, meet it at the high point. Here we're going to have another shot of off-ball technique by Williams. Williams is going to be up top against Shaheed of the Saints. Now, we're going to get a prime example of what I call a slide. Some people call it a shuffle. And all we're going to do is essentially slide, slide, slide. And he's just keeping his momentum and he's keeping his foot in the ground just in case this thing were to break. Now, most of the routes here in the NFL are going to break right around the sticks or right around 12 to 15. And that's exactly where we get this break. So you can see he's already leaning inside. He knows that Shaheed is outside of the numbers. So therefore that he's already kind of eliminated himself for a fade route. If he was going to run a fade, he would be trying to dig out Williams right now and then try and drop out or get a back shoulder fade right when he crosses the sticks. Instead, he's getting a vertical stem. So Shaheed already understands that Williams is on the outside leverage right here, and all he's going to do is bend it in for the dig. Williams does a really nice job, again, of staying in that slide. Once he gets to the sticks, he's going to open up, get a little bit of a crossover run. Once he sees him turn, notice how his feet, even in this crossover run, his feet stay together. He's going to plant, and then he's going to work down to cap this. So you want to suppress the top shoulder of the receiver. This is a really good example of that. And then play through the hands. It goes right into a tip drill for the linebacker right here. So let's watch this again. from the top. We get a vertical stem release. So if I get a vertical stem release and he's trying to step on my toes, I'm probably either going to get some sort of a sit down, or once I'm outside leverage, he's going to break away because he's already owning the leverage that he has. The receiver doesn't want it to change. You can see him with that little hurdle step. He rolls into it. Now we get Williams, who is then going to plant and drive, work down on the top, and then punch through the hands to finish the play. Nice job on the tip drill to get the pick. Here we have a reduced alignment or a condensed alignment by the Browns. We're going to be watching Williams up top. So we have a bunch set over here. So he's going to essentially play kind of a quarters. You can see this right here that we're getting quarters by the Jaguars. So he's just going to play the vertical stem, stay on the outside. Now he is getting in a little bit of a crossover run, but that's okay. Watch how these are not big crossover steps. His feet are staying relatively on top. Now, what I really like about this is that once these receivers stack, these two DBs are going to play like bumpers in a bowling alley, right? That he's going to take anything outside, he will take anything inside, and then we're anticipating at some point we're probably going to get a break one way or the other. So you can see right here is that once we get past the sticks, so once we get past about 10 yards, both of them hit 10 yards, you can actually see Williams work at a 45-degree angle, making sure that he can now cover this. Now this safety here understands that he's probably getting a post safety. So the way that this works out in this is going to affect the way Williams plays, is that this safety can stay high, this safety can take the intermediate, and then Williams really just has to get vertical and stay on top of anything as it comes. So as 19 breaks, he's still playing with vision. So he sees the quarterback launch the ball. He sees this out route. So what essentially we got is they are trying to drain out the coverage with this kind of elongated corner, and then they're trying to sneak a sail route underneath, and they're capturing the low defenders with these two guys, right? So he has to play almost as a midpoint. So instead of wanting to be on top and really have that hard cap on top of a receiver, he would more likely be able to play or want to play kind of even or even in this low hip. So you can see as we transition here, the ball is already out of the hand. Williams sees this. He's going to square up, and then he's going to plant and drive and end up knocking this ball out. So this is a really good example of he is one of the better vision breaking corners. Again, he plays off ball most of the time. Like I said, almost 90% of the time he's going to be an off ball situation. He sees this, he sees the corner, he sees the ball coming down, and then he's going to drive through the hands and attack those hands. Ball's on the ground. This is an incomplete pass, and another good example of him in off ball, understanding zone and understanding the routes in front of him, being able to vision the quarterback and then break and drive on the ball to break it up. Here's another shot from the same game, but we're going to now get a soft press. So we're going to have Williams here on the bottom. He's going to be facing more again from the outside. We're going to get a slant right here on third down. So all he's going to do now is kind of open up. He gets that vertical hinge. He's really protecting the inside right here. You can see the safety going over the top. So he can actually be very aggressive on this to the inside. So once he sits there, he's going to kind of hinge open, but notice how he doesn't necessarily get all the way across. So he's not perpendicular to the line of scrimmage. He's not parallel to the sideline. He's really in a 45-degree angle, which allows him then to kick step and flip back. So anytime, this is another thing, anytime you get a vertical stem by the receiver right here, notice how the receiver is really kind of attacking that outside shoulder, but it's really at a vertical stem. And he's kind of giving you this little stagger, this little hop, skip, and a jump right here. Once he plants, now I know where that ball is going. Now, Williams is a little bit late and he gets a little bit awkward. Notice how he has to throw his shoulders back. This is because he opens up a little bit too much. This is where we want to stay as square as we possibly can so that we can then stay on the same plane and then cap the receiver as we come down. So here he kind of kick steps, he gets it, but then he gets right behind and he plays through the hands of the receiver. He's really good at playing through the hands of the receiver. He creates a lot of disruption because he's usually in position and he plays through the hands. Even though he's a smaller corner, he very rarely gets boxed out. He attacks the ball in the air. This is a good example of him attacking the ball when he's on top of the receiver, punching that out. In our last clip, we're going to see him go up against Drake London, who's a bigger receiver for the Falcons. So again, when you're 5'9" and you're playing corner, we're going to be watching Williams up top. You have this tendency of getting boxed out by big receivers, or they're going to use routes that allow the receiver to box you out. So here's a good example of a dig, which is an in-breaking route off of zone coverage. So you can see here we're going to get zone coverage. Williams is going to be outside leverage. Now, he does a good job of working that kick step. once he sees the vertical stem, he's going to turn it into a shuffle, keeping his feet together. He's going to get that slight crossover run, but once London bends back inside, he's going to attack that top shoulder, and then he's going to attack the ball. This is a really nice job of being able to stay in your tuck. So even at 5'9", it's not hard for him to not play tall. So he plays in his tuck really, really well. He keeps his feet underneath of him, and he's able to break and drive. And again, this is a good example of a bigger receiver, and he actually works through the receiver. This is exactly what you want. You want to slide right on top of that arm, inside, punch through the hands. And again, another example of him in off-zone coverage, facing a kind of an out-breaking route or an in-breaking route where he can easily be boxed out, and him actually attacking the ball. He's one of the better corners I've seen of just really attacking the ball and understanding I'm going to punch my hand through the hand. So he may not get a lot of picks, especially against bigger receivers, because he can get boxed out, but he knows how to play through those hands, and he's violent at the reception point, and this is a great example of that. Hopefully through these 6 clips, I've illustrated how Darious Williams is one of the better off-ball corners in the NFL. He can play left. He can play right. He does really well, whether you're a smaller receiver or a big receiver. He attacks the ball at the reception point, and he knows where to put his hands, which is typically through the receivers. He even shows you that he can really has a great job at getting vertical and attacking the ball in the air, especially when the receivers are kind of not expecting him to be there. So this is an elite off-ball corner who can play in multiple zones. That's why when the Rams picked him back up, it made a lot of sense. He has a lot of coverage diversity within his play. This is not a just man lockdown guy or somebody that can only play in cover 2. He can play in multiple coverages and do it at a high level. He's in the top third in almost every category. And when you do need him to be able to press and play man coverage, especially on like a third and medium, he's able to do that. And we illustrated that with that example with Thomas and then Moore from the Browns. So he has a diverse coverage background, which makes him one of the top corners in the NFL. That's why he's ranked 10th in my Havoc composite rankings.